Okay, welcome to the first video of this module on punishment. The learning goals for this video is to be able to explain correctional punishments and then describe the reasons why punishment does not work. So first of all, punishment, it is from the learning principles. So if you recall the module on learning, we talked about deterrence. And so the criminal justice system tends to use punishment in hopes that it will deter people from committing crime. And some example of punishment here in the criminal justice system, first of all, imposing longer sentences. So the belief that having these mandatory minimums could potentially deter people from committing crime, not working. Same thing with death penalties, using prison sentences instead of community sentences. The idea of punishing smarter, so using boot camps, shock incarceration, having curfews, electronic monitoring, where you have a bracelet on your ankle so that they can track where you're going. All these things are example of punishments in the criminal justice system. And so punishment, again, it's defined as a negative consequence to a behavior, and it's believed to, it's hypothesized to decrease the likelihood of a behavior from recurring. We know that punishment can work to decrease behavior from lab-based studies. So if you think about, the Pavlov's dog, for example, or even shock studies where you get electric shocks depending on errors, and you end up not doing as many errors. So we know it can work in lab-based studies, but why isn't it working to decrease offending behavior? There's research over and over showing, that longer sentences, harsh penalties, forcing prison sentences, all these things aren't related to a decrease in reoffending. So why is it that punishment can work for lab-based studies but doesn't work to decrease offending behavior? There are 6 reasons. So the first one is intensity. So low levels of punishments will decrease the behavior, but only temporarily. So when the behavior returns, more severe punishment is required to decrease it. And so that results in an escalating cycle of punishment as tolerance increases. So small punishment all the way up to more and more intense punishment. In our criminal justice system, however, we don't provide punishment at the maximum intensity. And it would be unfair to do so, right? So it doesn't have that I guess the escalating cycle that would be helpful to reduce behavior. The second one, and perhaps the most important reason why it doesn't work, is because immediency is not something that we do in the criminal justice system. So in learning theories and in these studies, you find that punishment needs to immediately follow the behavior that you're trying to suppress. So if something happens, boom, the punishment occurs right away. And if there's delay, the target behavior could be reinforced, and some other behavior that's closer to that, punishment could be the one being punished. We know our criminal justice system is not swift, right? It is slow. It is certainly not delivered immediately after the crime, typically for the majority of the offending behaviors. And so the behavior that needs to be targeted are not being targeted quickly, right? It's the immediacy is not happening for punishment to actually be effective here. Third is consistency. So punishment has to be delivered every time the target behaviors occurs. So anytime that there's an offense, the punishment must occur until there's complete suppression. And this kind of repeating pairing of punishment with the behavior then allows the behavior to become a signal of impending punishment, and so then you reduce that punishment, right? That behavior, I mean. So consistency is key here, right? If I steal the cookie, I get punished right away every time I steal the cookie. In our criminal justice system, again, we know based on self-report surveys that there are a lot of instances of a crime that go unpunished altogether. And then also we do know that the intensity of that punishment could vary, based on the the police officer that you have, the judge in front of you, right? So it's not even consistent punishment. It's you may not get it, and if you get it the second time around, it could be completely different than the first time around. The fourth reason why punishment doesn't work in the criminal justice system is that in order for punishment to work, escape routes must be blocked. So if an individual can get themselves away from the punishment and accomplish their objective by another means, then the punishment hasn't really worked. In our criminal justice system, it's not usually possible to block escape routes, right? You can punish one criminal behavior and still leave open the possibility of, having completed another criminal behavior. Just because you've been found to have committed a crime and have been punished, i.e. like sent to prison for a crime, doesn't mean you can't commit other crimes. There is an escape route. So another reason why the criminal justice punishment doesn't work in the criminal justice field. Next is the person variable. So person factors will influence the effectiveness of punishment. There are a range of demographic variables, biological, cognitive, state conditions, all of these things that could influence the effectiveness of punishment. We are, the people in the criminal justice system, the people who commit crime, are a varied bunch. And so many offending individuals serving time in our criminal justice system possesses characteristics or traits that could reduce the potential impact of punishment. Psychopathy being one, if someone who's scoring high on psychopathy, they don't experience fear or anxiety, well, punishment doesn't really work for them, right? So their person variables are another reason why punishment doesn't work in the criminal justice system. And then finally, density. The density of punishment must be greater than the density of rewards. And punishment may not be perceived to outweigh rewards. And so if the density of punishment is not greater than the density of rewards, punishment isn't working. And there's, in our criminal justice system, again, if you still, let's say, $3 million, and so you get punished and maybe they give you a year in prison, maybe the density reward was much larger than that 1 year in prison. Obviously, that's a very specialized example, but if you think about individuals who have a lifelong history of going into prisons and they have made friends in prisons, their father might be in prison, maybe their brother, their cousins, it's a family, environment. Being punished by being sent to prison might not actually be that big of a punishment compared to the reward of committing whatever the crime was. And there's also in the criminal justice system many instances where crime will go unpunished altogether, right? So again, sixth reason, density. So why is it that we keep punishing? Why is it that the criminal justice system, despite all this research showing, it's not very effective, and having these theoretical reasons, these 6 reasons why they wouldn't be, you shouldn't even expect it to be effective. Why is it that we keep doing this? The first one is people believe in the effect of punishment. If you do a survey of, just normal people in society, they're going to say, yeah, of course prison sentences work. And obviously, people vote for the politicians, and the politicians really think that getting tough on crime is what the public wants. And so they're going to be pushing for that. Rehabilitation is often seen as soft and ineffective by the public, and ergo, politicians tend not to want to support that because they don't want to be seen as being soft on crime. It also takes a lot of time and energy to evaluate programs. And if you find that they're not working, then it takes time also to initiate new programs. So again, it has to, there's all these kind of societal pressure for people to, for the status quo to remain, despite the research showing it's not really effective. It's also perhaps a philosophical question too, right? The role of our criminal justice system is the role of our criminal justice system to be, to provide a retribution, right? To give a punishment to a crime, or is it the role of our criminal justice system to ensure public safety by reducing reoffending? If you believe the role of the criminal justice system, it should be about public safety, then you shouldn't be following punishment. That shouldn't be your way of preventing offending. If you believe that retribution is a key important role of the criminal justice system, then punishment, even if it's not effective, would follow. And then, of course, you could believe a little bit of, column A and a little bit of column B. And so those individuals might believe, we do need prison sentences, but perhaps we reserve it for a very select few. So before ending, I do want to end with one thing, correctional quackery, that has been termed by Gendreau and colleagues. It is the popularity of offending programs founded upon common sense rather than empirical evidence. So boot camp, pet therapy, acupuncture, it's referred to by Gendreau and colleagues as correctional quackery. And if you click on the link here, there is a bit more information about it. And there was one example that Gendreau provided as an example of this correctional quackery is a Dolly Parton program for offenders in New Jersey, where offenders were made to dress up like Dolly Parton, and then you did humiliate them. And the whole point was, again, they thought, the individuals who were leading this treatment program, that this would work with reducing, their, it's a punishment and it would reduce reoffending. Of course, it didn't work. There's questions where you put a sign on your back, on an individual's back who's justice involved, that says, I'm an offender, I like X, Y, and then they'd have to walk around and get humiliated. Again, these are correctional quackery. It is these programs that are, again, founded on these common sense rather than empirical evidence. And it's based on, or maybe potentially caused by, Gendreau would say, by people who end up being in the criminal justice system, getting hired to be these correctional program officers, and they do not have the background to know, the theories of crime. What are the reasons why people commit crime? What are these criminogenic needs that we should be targeting? So instead, they do what they think could potentially help reduce crime. So that's the end of this video. Thank you.